so what we're all hoping for, right, is that you've learned a lot over the course of the semester, and that the things that you've learned will be things that you can provide evidence of on the assessment, right? And so the assessment tool that we put together has these essay questions, and as we saw in the mid-semester assessment, that was a pretty clear indication, gave us a lot of evidence in terms of both your ability to describe the concepts that are presented and that you've been reading about and discussing, and also your ability to analyze and apply them, right, using observations and inferences. And the best way to do that is to provide as much detail as you reasonably can, right? Don't assume that I or somebody else is going to just know what you mean, right? Because, well, we might know what you mean, but we also might wonder whether you really have it all there when you start putting it together. So be as complete with those answers as you can possibly be. Provide as much detail as you can. Certainly use the terms, use the concepts that we've been introducing, that you've been defining and working into your different examples, right? It wouldn't make sense to try to give an answer completely in sort of what we call layman's terms, right? When you've been learning the terminology that relates to, say, population ecology, right? You wouldn't simply want to say, well, there's a graph, there's an increase. You would want to use the terms exponential and logistic growth. You'd want to use the terms carrying capacity to describe what's happening there, what parts of the graph are appearing. You'd want to compare J-selected or K-selected species and R-selected species. You'd want to actually use that terminology to show that you know what it means, right? And if you don't use that terminology, you might hope that, you know, we would just give you the benefit of the doubt, but we won't, right? Because somebody else might give a similar answer and not really have a clue as to how those things relate, right? So if you have a clue, if you understand it, put it down there. Use those terms by all means, okay? And then the other part with the multiple choice questions, I know this is an area both of concern and also maybe a little bit of relief. The fact that you get to practice using multiple choice format questions, right? It's kind of a big deal. A lot of you, again, are nursing majors, and we do a lot more with multiple choice style questions. And the feeling that you have that you understand the stuff, but you just can't pick the right answer, is a feeling that, on one hand, you need to be familiar with, right? And on the other hand, you need to develop the confidence just to say, you know, this is the best answer. And so a couple of strategies that you should keep in mind for multiple choice questions and answers. When you read the question, you should think about what the answer is before you start looking at A through E, okay? Because if you know what the answer is before you even look at the options, then you should be able to find that answer among the options. If you're not quite sure what it's going to look like, then in most cases, when you start looking at those options, there'll be more than one that looks pretty reasonable, right? Because the way they're written, not to trick you, right? Trick questions, they involve magic. I don't have any magic. So what you're looking for is the best answer, the answer that most closely connects with that question. And there'll be other questions or other, you know, possible answers there. We actually call them distractors. They're supposed to look close so that you're actually making some finer distinctions. And that's important for you to be able to do that. And one of the things I hope with the weekly quizzes was that you would get a lot of practice with this. And I have a sense that some of you have, that you've used those weekly quizzes and they've been helpful for you, both in guiding you through the material and also in practicing reading those questions and thinking about them. But I also have some evidence now, and this is distressing to me, but this is just, this part of my job. I also understand there are some people who have done the weekly quizzes by, you know, sort of you get the questions, you print them out, and then you go back and you just look up bit by bit each piece of information and you figure out what the answer is, and then you go back in and you answer the questions on the quiz the next time. Well, that's not a good strategy, right? It's a good strategy for finding the right answer, right? But it's not a good strategy for developing an understanding of the material, right? Because if you understand the material, you'll be able to answer the questions. If you can find the answer to the question, that means you can find the answer to the question. It doesn't mean you'll understand the material if you get a similar question down the line. One of the common, I guess it was a complaint that I heard after the mid-semester semester assessment was the stuff on the assessment wasn't the same as the stuff we had covered. And as I sort of probed that a little bit further, so what do you mean? Give me an example. There were people who thought the assessment was going to contain the exact same questions that they'd seen before so that they would be able to identify the answers. That is never going to be the way it works, right? You can't expect that. I don't know if that's been your experience in the past or where that expectation comes from. But the questions you're asked on an assessment, if it's a meaningful assessment, will always be a variation that asks you or requires you to apply what you've learned in a slightly different context. Because that's how life is, right? If all you really needed to know was a certain set of things and those same things kept happening to you over and over again so you always knew what to do, your life would be so boring. I hope your life is never like that, right? I hope you don't end up in a situation where that's what you come to expect day after day. You're always going to be applying what you know to new situations. So the assessment is going to contain new examples or different kinds of examples to which you should be able to apply what you've learned. So prepare yourself in that way. And then I guess the last or one other bit of strategy, there are other things too with multiple choice, is when you come down and you're really not sure which is the best answer, right? It's worth giving some thought to whether there's a none of the above or all of the above option. Because sometimes if you're having trouble deciding between a couple things that you think might be right and there's an all of the above option, well, maybe looking more carefully at all the possibilities might clue you in that, yeah, it really is all of the above. Or if you're really not sure because none of the possibilities seem quite right and you look and you see, oh, there's a none of the above. Well, then maybe if you could eliminate all of those, it really is none of the above. So that's actually part of the strategy, I guess, that you could consider in taking some of those kinds of quizzes. And you're probably familiar with others too, and you'll develop more strategies for those. This is only a portion of the assessment, so it's not like you have to, completely ace it, but it'll help you, I think, if you're thinking ahead about how you're going to try to answer those, how to approach that. Okay. Any general questions just about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, could we start the assessment at 10 instead of 10, so we get that extra 10 minutes?
An extra 10 minutes. Well, the assessment will be designed, for you to finish within, an hour and 50 minutes, say. And because there'll be probably people, wandering in at, not wandering, but some of you have class before this, some of you can just get to campus at 10. So people will plan to start officially at 10:10. If you need an extra 10 minutes at the end, probably that's going to be possible. I think the rooms are available and the proctors are available. So I wouldn't worry too much about that time frame. We're kind of planning for that amount of time. Okay? Good question?
Yeah, how will the results of the test be given?
Well, we're going to be compiling them during assessment week, and we'll put together a summary, like I handed back that summary sheet to each of you in class the following Friday. Last time, we'll have a sheet like that can be uploaded to Educator, so you'll be able to see that on Educator.
So are you saying that we come to class to take the final next Friday, and then we come the following Friday?
You don't come again. You can see your results on Educator. Instead of handing them back, you'll actually get them electronically that way, right? So, and obviously, individuals might want to have more clarification or feedback. That's something you're going to arrange probably with your discussion instructor. We'll have that information toward the end of finals week. Okay. All right. Which is both good and bad. I mean, we'd love to give you more feedback at the end of the semester, and in a lot of cases, people would love to have more feedback at the end of the semester. On the other hand, I've seen it plenty of times where people just want to know if they passed. Okay? And it's painful for me to write a whole bunch of feedback and say, oh, did I pass? And I'm like, yeah, well, look at me. And they're like, oh, that's fine. Really? No, please, just take it. So we'll be walking that boundary a little bit. We'll try to give you enough to give you a sense of what your performance was, and if you would like more, if you feel you need more, that's certainly a possibility to make available through your discussion instructors or through me. Okay? All right. Okay, so we'll have time for other questions just at the